Okay, so I am a little late to the party. I seen the new Joker film a few weeks ago, and I've already seen everybody shitting on it. Everybody's dogging on it. I've seen the Metacritic score, the Rotten Tomato score, the big ass flop numbers it did in the box office. And rightfully so. This is not a good movie. I do agree with the critics. I don't like it. However, in anticipation to watching the new Joker film, I rewatched the original 2019 one for the first time since 2019 when I first saw it in theaters, and I'm honestly more excited to talk about that film because my thoughts and opinions on it, for the most part, haven't really changed all that much, and at least not for the better. Okay, so here's what I want to do in this video. I want to go ahead and give a spoiler-free review for both Joker films. Timestamps are going to be in the description if you just want to hear about one specific movie. And then after I'm done scoring them, I'm going to go ahead at the end of the video give two similar recommendations for each film that you can add to your watch list. Now, that being said, full warning, this is going to be the most obvious similar recommendations I've ever given out in any video. Hopefully you haven't seen them, but you most definitely have at least heard of them. Probably. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the most recent Joker film, the sequel, and that is Joker Folie Adieu, directed by Todd Phillips, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. And I am obviously not French, so we're just going to go ahead and call this Joker 2 for the remainder of the video. So in Joker 2, we are following Arthur Fleck and the aftermath of all the events that transpired in the first film. And although I didn't like this movie, I will at least give them props for trying to do something different. Where you got the first film, huge success, and it went for more of a rated R, dark, gritty, slow burn character study. This film did not take the safe route and went completely left field, and we now have a musical. Unfortunately though, they did not pull it off. The musical elements, they lose their charm by the third song. See, in a good musical, the songs are not just spectacles, they're not just visual, audible eye candy. They add to the story, usually showcasing characters' thoughts, emotions, goals in a very overexpressive, entertaining way. Very few songs actually accomplish that in this movie. After a while, they get tedious and downright unnecessary. And I know I'm not alone on this because in the theater, an hour into the movie, there was a guy a few rows above me where the moment you heard like even the beginning sound of an instrument, you just hear this guy go audibly let out a ugh. I'm over here like, I'm with you, pal. This shit's ass. Anytime the story got even remotely interesting, a musical number would just barge in and there would be no payoff. It would just slow down the momentum of the story. And that's the last thing you want in your musical. For your musical scenes, especially in this film, to be the weaker parts of an already weak film. Don't get me wrong, the songs aren't bad. Lady Gaga could obviously sing. Joaquin Phoenix held his own. I thought he was good. But they feel like they didn't keep the story moving and they weren't exciting enough to keep me engaged. Felt like filler, just padding the runtime. Around the halfway point where it turns into more of a court drama, although kind of silly concept in the story was at least trying to give you something. Things seemed like they were actually kind of moving. I'm like, okay, is this where the hook comes in? But it just never goes anywhere. In fact, I would say it got worse because that leads us to the final act, the last 30 minutes, which, for lack of a better word, was bizarre. No, there's a better word. Stupid. It was stupid. Final act, deadass, just sucks. Half the time you're just thinking, why is any of this happening? What is happening? I think I understand Todd Phillips' decisions and why he decided to make the movie the way that he did. The movie as a whole feels like a big response to the reception of the original Joker from 2019, specifically to the small but very loud minority group, and that is the incel dipshits. I'm specifically talking about the group of people, the guys who will constantly bitch and whine like, oh, women don't want me, I hate women, society's a dumpster, when in reality they're just an antisocial, narcissistic fucking loser. Yet they blame all their problems on other people and therefore justify their spiteful hatred towards them. There's nothing wrong with liking any characters in any fiction, but there is a problem with these dweebs who unironically idolize Patrick Bateman, Joker, Homelander. Like I said, this is a very small but loud minority group. If you go on Twitter and you see a guy with a Patrick Bateman profile picture, 9 times out of 10 he's either talking about Jews or black people or women or just spreading misinformation because he finds it extremely challenging to have consensual sex with a woman. I bring this up because in the first film, these freaks gravitated towards that, to that sort of isolated, lonely, fed up, rising warrior. Todd Phillips must have seen that reaction and must have been disgusted because he made this film where in Joker 2, Arthur Fleck is displayed as a lot more pathetic and a lot less sympathetic, which is not exactly how he was portrayed in the first film. Other decisions that Todd Phillips made, like Harley Quinn, is clearly a representation of these incels, of these people who idolize Joker, and this movie paints a clear picture of, hey, Joker was never meant to be idolized, and you're weird for doing that. Like, I agree with the message, but you could have told it in a much more interesting way. Like, yes, this is gonna piss off the incels, they're not gonna like this Joker, but nobody's gonna like this Joker. Not the normal people, not the fans of the original, not people who just wanted to see a good Joker movie. The story and the writing, and this is my biggest critique with the first film, is just there's nothing beneath the surface. It's so weak, you don't give a shit about really any of these characters. Joaquin Phoenix, just like in the first film, he's fantastic in this one as Joker. Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, she did alright, she was pretty good. In fact, if anything, she was underused, I'd say. I'm trying to think of other compliments to give this movie. The first 2 songs were pretty good. It was shot well, just like the first film. I did like the opening sequence, the little animated intro. That was neat. So besides like the first 2 songs being pretty good, the rest become sort of tedious and bland and tiresome, and they're sprinkled throughout this movie. But the movie itself has a underwhelming story with such a bizarrely written final act. I don't know who was meant to enjoy this. You know, this is not one of those 10 steps ahead of the curve, genius, 200 IQ, nobody understands it now, but it'll be looked at as a masterpiece 20 years from now. No, this was an underwritten, underwhelming, poorly executed movie. Not dog shit. It's shot amazing, the lead acting is great, but it's not worth a rewatch, or really a recommendation. I'm giving Joker 2 a 4 out of 10, even if you're a diehard fan of the original. I don't think I'd recommend this. Now, before we get into the Joker 2019 version, I just want to say real quick, I am very close to hitting 100 subs. I do have a personal goal of hitting 500 by February, so if you can, help me out, that'd be awesome. Alright, now with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the original Joker from 2019, directed by Todd Phillips, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Robert De Niro, and Zazie Beetz. 2019 was such a phenomenal year for movies. It wasn't 1974 where we literally got genre-defying classic after classic after classic, but in terms of cinema, I feel like we got such a variety of quality. Like, there are so many different movies coming out with so many different voices for so many different types of people. Yes, some were better than others, but overall, like I said, we got a good variety. In this powerhouse here, amongst all these bangers, some people would say Joker is the best movie of 2019. Actually, a lot of people would say that. This movie not only got 11 nominations and 2 Oscar wins, but it also grossed, I believe, over $1 billion. Hugely successful movie. Now, $1 billion aren't necessarily the craziest thing to associate with superhero movies, especially at this time. However, for a comic book movie to be a rated R, slow burn character study of a villain, yeah, it is pretty crazy to think it was that successful. Crazy on paper, because when you watch the movie, you'll be like, oh, okay, this is the most surface level, simplistic, dull character study I've seen in my life. It's not a horrible movie, it's a horribly unoriginal movie, which to a degree does make it bad, but I'll elaborate on that. Now, some of you may have heard this argument before. It is probably the most popular argument in terms of criticizing Joker, and that being that this movie is a inferior, soulless version of 2 great Scorsese films. Those being Taxi Driver and The King Comedy. Well, newsflash, buddy, they're right. That's exactly what happened there. I hate to sound more snarky than I already have, but this movie is derivative. So like Joker, both movies, Taxi Driver and The King Comedy, they're character studies. In Taxi Driver, we follow Travis Bickle, played by the GOAT, Robert De Niro. Travis is a taxi driver in 1970s New York City, and he is a deeply disturbed loner, and throughout the movie, we hear his thoughts were in his mind. He's constantly having these thoughts of rage and disgust and anger at his city. He thinks society is a big pile of filth, and he's clearly mentally unhinged, and throughout the movie you see him kind of not necessarily coming to terms with that, but slowly becoming more of a danger, we'll say. The King of Comedy follows another deeply disturbed Robert De Niro character. However, it's disturbed character in a different way. Robert De Niro plays Rupert Pumpkin, and he does not live in reality. He has these fantastical ideas of himself, of his place in society. He believes he is destined to become a world-class, world-famous, massive comedian. And he will achieve this status of superstardom by any means necessary. Not necessarily in a malevolent sort of way, but more in the sense of he seems to not be able to comprehend other people's feelings, or right or wrong in general. For example, again, no spoilers, but he sees nothing wrong with stalking a talk show host. My words can only go so far. You have to watch all three films to understand the difference between being inspired by something and making the derivative version of something.
Derivative?
There's nothing wrong with stealing art. Artists and directors steal art from each other all the time. I say steal because it's not even stealing. What happens is an artist will take something that they clearly like, that clearly moves them. They take in all the new ideas that they gained from whatever art that they enjoyed, and they mix it in with their own creativity that's influenced by their own personal life experiences. They add their own voice and soul to the point where you could see inspiration yet differentiate the two. A recent example of this would be Ty West's X from 2022. Clearly inspired by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, clearly a homage to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, yet nobody's calling it a derivative soulless version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Even though you can see the love letter in it and all the similarities, it could still stand on its own two legs as a standalone Ty West film. You could still hear his voice. Joker 2019 has no voice. It's a moody, boring, flandering character study that tries to tackle subjects it clearly cannot tackle. It's got some of the most basic, entry-level, surface-level commentary on society and mentally ill people. I'm not asking for like a Slavoj Žižek breakdown of society, but the way that this movie is displaying itself
Insists upon itself, Lois.
What?
It insists upon itself.
What does that even mean?
because the movie is shot beautifully. The cinematography is top tier. This film and the sequel, Joker 2, look amazing. The score in the original Joker 2019, phenomenal. You get these violins, these very moody violins. You mix that in with the acting from Joaquin Phoenix and Robert De Niro and Zazie Beetz, even though she doesn't really have that much to shine with, she's still good. The acting, the cinematography, the score, all great. They're carrying this movie on its fucking back. You would think with these dreary violins and the beautiful cinematography that we're watching some grand American epic, until you hear the dialogue, until you realize how mundane and uninteresting the story has been the entire time. The writing is just so elementary and obvious when it doesn't think that it is. See, it feels like it wants to be this thought-provoking social commentary masterpiece until you get dialogue like, "The government cut our funding, Arthur. They don't give a shit about people like us. It was me over there, you walk right over me. You keep asking if I have negative thoughts. All I have are negative thoughts." I'm not saying you have to be subtle to be good. One of my favorite movies of the year, The Substance, is like the least subtle movie of all time. And it's still amazing because it's not trying to be subtle. It's quite obvious, but it's still telling its story and its message and its theme in very fun, innovative, interesting ways. Joker 2019, 3/4 of the movie is just people being miserable as fuck. That is literally a majority of the movie besides maybe the last 20-25 minutes. They try shoehorning in this subplot of Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne, that was uninteresting, especially on a rewatch. But besides that, every side character, everybody's just a miserable douchebag asshole. The movie's just misery porn. I understand tone and atmosphere, but there's gotta be more unique and compelling ways to showcase society bad because people bad. In fact, the movie that Joker steals from, Taxi Driver, it does this in such a phenomenal way. Taxi Driver has such a consistent and realized tone without being amateur or edgy about it. Some people are friendly, some people are morally gray, some people are innocent, some people are assholes. The city as a whole has some bad parties, but the city itself is not the problem. Travis Bickle is clearly the problem, and you never sympathize with him. Sure, you can feel bad that he's lonely, but throughout the movie, he just keeps having these sort of irrational, insane thoughts. He's a scary individual. In Joker, Arthur Fleck is sort of displayed as an anti-hero, which I will argue to the day I die, Travis Bickle was never an anti-hero. He was the protagonist, but he had literally no redeeming qualities, including the ending. The ending, I can't spoil Taxi Driver, just know that it was not a happy ending like some people think it was. Alright, I gotta review Taxi Driver. Some moron's gonna try arguing with me without realizing that they're wrong and I'm right. Maybe it's just my morals, but I don't think doing a good thing for for a bad reason makes you a good person. In Joker 1, they're not showing him as a superhero, but as an anti-hero, where it's more of like oh, he's morally gray, but he's kind of got a point. No, he doesn't. Everyone knows society is bad. Everyone knows our systems are fucked, but killing people is not gonna solve anything. I will say, the best scene in the movie is the talk show host scene. That is a well done scene. Obviously the acting, Robert De Niro and Joaquin Phoenix, they were great in that, but the build up, the momentum of the tension, even though you knew what was gonna happen, it still felt pretty surprising how it ended. Not necessarily surprising, but it was more like an opera. Like, you knew the climax was gonna come, and when it happened, it didn't disappoint you. I thought it was fantastically well done. I think that's the best thing to say about Todd Phillips' directing and writing. That scene shows, okay, he could do something. And like I said, this is not a horrible movie. It drags a little bit at certain points, but overall the pacing wasn't necessarily an issue. Again, it is shot beautifully. The acting from all parties were great. But it's that story. It's so... I don't like how unexciting and unoriginal the story is. The theme that it tried handling, I felt like they mishandled it. It seemed like this movie wanted to say something, but in that process ended up saying nothing. This is a carbon copy of two superior films with no voice in it. I'm giving Joker 2019 a 5 out of 10. If you like comic book movies that are supposed to be taken more serious, you know, the rated R ones, then yeah, sure, I'd recommend it. Alright, so for the similar recommendations, let's go ahead and start off with the recommendation for Joker Folie, Deux, and that would be La La Land. Directed by Damien Chazelle, starring Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. Like I said, these are going to be very obvious, similar recommendations. Joker 2 is a musical, and if you want to actually watch a good musical, this is the go-to. Everybody loves this movie for good reason. It is a classic at this point. It's funny, it's heartfelt, the chemistry that Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling have is really the foundation of the film. And obviously, with that being said, they killed it in terms of just performances, acting, and singing. The songs in this movie are actually really good. When the musical numbers do hit, you don't, oh, okay, we get this over with. Like, no, they actually immerse you into the story more. It pushes the story forward. Not only do they not slow down the movie, with my experience, every song was getting better and better. The set pieces, the costume designs, the dancing, obviously the music, the songs themselves, all just so well choreographed and just overall fun to watch. Like, this movie is such, I'm gonna sound so corny, it's such a joyful movie. Again, I'm not gonna spoil this movie, but the ending is amazing. I'll leave it at that. If you haven't watched La La Land, even if you don't like Joker 2, give it a try. Because this movie is a million times better than Joker. Either of them, to be honest. And for the other obvious similar recommendation, if I'm going to be giving a recommendation for the original Joker 2019, it's going to be either Taxi Driver or The King of Comedy, the two movies that it steals from. I'm going to be going with The King of Comedy, 1982, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring the GOAT Robert De Niro. This is a character study of a deeply antisocial, fantastical individual who, not in an overtly way, is clearly disturbed. The character is Rupert Pumpkin, played by Robert De Niro, and this is one of the most interesting, unique protagonists I've ever seen in a film, and it's one of my favorite performances of all time. If there was ever a movie to fit the definition of a black comedy, it's The King of Comedy. This is a very funny movie, but also really unnerving without being over the top. It's not in your face, oh look how edgy or fucked up or insane or unhinged this character is. He clearly is unhinged, but I can't spoil it. Rupert Pumpkin makes you uncomfortable, but not in a Patrick Bateman, Joker, Homelander, even Taxi Driver sort of way. He is so off-putting. And in a way, he's scarier than the others because Rupert Pumpkin has this almost childlike cadence. Even if you don't like Joker, which again, like I said, I'm iffy on the movie, it's okay. The King of Comedy, honestly one of the most underrated movies of all time. If you like character studies, you have to watch The King of Comedy. Alright, well that covers for the reviews and the similar recommendations. Thank you to everybody who watched. Also real quick, what to be expecting on the channel soon, I am working on a Terrifier 3 video, and I'm working on the review for Look Back. I don't know if Look Back is gonna be getting its own video or if I'm gonna put that in a movie roundup, because I've also seen Kato Lake. I'm gonna be seeing The Apprentice most likely tomorrow. I'm not sure, but expect the reviews on those soon, but definitely Terrifier 3 will be the next one. And I will be seeing Smile 2 later this week, so expect a review on that next week. Alright, with all that being said, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.